Hello everyone, this video is about the Paris Agreement. In this video, I've tried to collect data from various sources on the internet to make sure reliable data is present at one place. So let's begin with the video. Now, basically, in 1992, as a result of the Rio Earth Summit, three conventions were its output. The first one is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, the Convention on Biological Diversity, basically to preserve the variety of flora and fauna, and Agenda 21. As a part of Agenda 21, the UNCCD, that is the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, was enacted. When we come to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, every year there's a meeting of the parties to this convention. Hence, this meeting is known as the Conference of Parties or COP. Till now, till 2019, 25 COPs have been conducted. The most important of these COPs are the third COP. In the third COP, the Kyoto Protocol was adopted in 1997 and it came into force in 2005. So following 2005, this Conference of Parties, this meeting also started serving as a meeting point for the parties to the Kyoto Protocol, and hence COP 11 also began to be known as CMP 1. The P in the CMP stands for the protocol. So COP is Conference of Parties, CMP is Conference of Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol. Now, an important part is in 2015 in Paris, where the COP21 and the CMP15 was conducted, the Paris Agreement was adopted. It came into force the following year in 2016. So since 2016, COP, besides being known as CMP, it is also being known as CMA, that is a meeting point for the parties to the Paris Agreement. The A in CMA stands for the agreement. Now, the goal of the Paris Agreement is to limit the global temperature increase in this century to 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level, while making the efforts to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, the pre-industrial level should ideally mean the time period before the Industrial Revolution, that is before 1750. But as we go back in time, the reliable data on the global average temperature is not present. So, the agreement takes the pre-industrial level time period as the time period between 1850 and 1900. So basically, if the average global temperature between 1850 to 1900 was 32 degrees Celsius in India, then the Paris Agreement will make efforts to ensure that this temperature does not rises above 34 degrees Celsius, and if possible to limit the increase to 1.5 degree Celsius. Now, to give relevance to this temperature limit, we have to put a cap on the emission goal. The draft aims to peak the global greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible and to achieve the balance between emissions and sinks in the second half of the century. So basically, the temperature increase is because of global warming, which is due to the trapping of the infrared radiations of the sun by greenhouse gases. In order to limit the temperature increase, we will have to cap our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, there are a lot of developing countries which, in order to sustain their growth, they have to burn a certain degree of fossil fuels in order to fight social evils like poverty, etc. Hence, the Paris Agreement aims to reach the peak of the fossil fuel consumption as soon as possible, and after that peak is reached, beyond which fossil fuels don't have to be burned to ensure sustainable growth in developing countries. The emissions have to be offset by sinks. So in the second half of this century, that is from 2050 to 2100, we have to ensure that whatever emission we are doing, that is being neutralized by man-made carbon sinks that we create. Now, in order to achieve these two goals of temperature reduction by emission reduction, every country, rich, poor, developed or developing, has to submit its carbon reduction targets. So you see, the agreement has a universal approach in this regard. There are no specific requirements about how much the countries should reduce their emissions, and there are no legal obligations to do so. Now these targets, they will be reviewed after every 5 years at a meeting which will be known as a global stock take. The first review is scheduled in 2023. Now, in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, the countries need to move to cleaner modes of energy generation, which require funding. So developed countries, the countries which have gained development, they will continue to provide climate finance to developing countries. Here, the common but differentiated principle is still being maintained. As you can see, when it comes to the reduction target, it is universal. Every country, whether it is developed or developing, it has to put forward a voluntary pledge of its carbon reduction. But in terms of finance, because the developed countries are historically responsible for the pollution that they have caused, which has fueled their growth, they will continue to finance the developing countries. But still, this funding, there's no legal obligation on the developed countries. It is a moral obligation on their part to finance the clean development in developing countries. Now, the current aspiration is that by the year 2020, the developed countries will be in a position to raise $100 billion each year for developing countries. Now, as we can see that the nationally determined contributions are not legally binding, the mandate to finance clean development in developing nations is not legally binding. So, will this system work just under moral obligations? Well, we have to realize that why was a system developed where more than the pressure from legal obligations, there is a pressure from moral obligations and peer pressure from other countries and pressure organizations within the countries like NGOs. See, the past attempts at a legally binding climate treaty have really failed. The Montreal Protocol, which was adopted in 1987, set legally binding targets for how quickly we can phase out chlorofluorocarbon production because they were depleting our ozone layer. Special allowances for poorer countries were given by which they were allowed to increase their chlorofluorocarbon use for a period of time before making reductions. Now, this was a huge success. So by 1990s, when people all over the world, when climate scientists and world leaders started combating the problem of global warming and climate change, they thought that why not a climate treaty be enacted on the same lines as of Montreal Protocol. So the 1997 Kyoto Protocol came into being. The rich countries would have to adopt legally binding targets for emission reductions, whereas the developing countries like China and India would get a pass for the time being, since their per capita emission or their per individual emissions were much lower and they were still growing. Hence, the Kyoto Protocol split the world between developed and developing. The result of this protocol was a complete failure. First, the reasons of the failures was reducing fossil fuel was more complicated and difficult than phasing out chlorofluorocarbons, because a ready substitute was not available, as in the case of fossil fuels back in 2005 when this Kyoto Protocol came into force. Now, countries like China and India, which were developing countries and were exempted from the legal obligations under the Kyoto Protocol, they grew so fast and they burned so much coal that the global emissions soared. And these soaring global emissions, they dampened the efforts of the rich countries and they swarmed the cuts that the rich countries made. Hence, as a result of this, there was no net progress on ground achieved, and developed nations like USA, later Canada, they dropped out without any penalties. That's why the Paris Agreement in 2015 includes a new architecture for climate agreement. Every country will start by submitting an entirely voluntary pledge for how it plans to address climate change. This ensures their universal participation, and countries would also feel more comfortable making ambitious plans because they will not have to stick with the absolute bare minimum for a fear of failing and being sanctioned or held liable. Now, as a part of this agreement, India is a signatory of the Paris Agreement, and India's nationally determined contributions are: it is committed to achieve about 40% of its electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel energy resources by 2030. Currently in India, a lot of our electric power plants, they work using coal and fossil fuels. So by 2030, India has pledged that 40% of its electric power generating capacity will shift from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel energy resources. Also, India has committed to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 levels. That means whatever India was generating, whatever emissions that India was generating in 2005, India will cut it down by 33 to 35% by 2030. The third is basically the tree cover, it acts as a carbon sink because trees absorb the carbon dioxide and use it to make food in the process of photosynthesis. So India has pledged that it will make additional tree covers that can absorb 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2030. So, as a part of the ongoing research to supplement the efforts under the Paris Agreement, IPCC's latest report, the 1.5 degree Celsius report came, and it was a shocking report because it said the world is not on track to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, let alone 1.5 degrees Celsius. If countries achieve their current plans, which is not guaranteed because the obligations are not legally binding under the Paris Agreement, the global average temperature is set to rise by more than 3 degrees Celsius this century and not 2. So, Talanoa Dialogue was conducted as a test run for the stock taking, which has to take place in 2023, in order for the countries to reassess their pledged contributions and to step them up so that we can hold the temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius. So basically, this was all about the Paris Agreement, why it is not legally binding, what it aims to achieve, how it aims to achieve, and what is the ongoing process. I hope you've been able to understand the video, and now you can confidently say that now you know it. And if any suggestions, please do write in the comment box and I will make sure that I do the improvements. Thank you.